Hello everyone, my name is Elizabeth Lemelin and today I'm going to be going over my final project for EME 6055. So regarding the agenda, I've already gone over my introduction. Next I'll go over my vision for the future classroom and training. Then we will discuss one emerging technology and the benefits and concerns of said technology, and then I'll list my final recommendations. So, in order to go through my vision of the future classroom and training, I think it's important to analyze patterns that have occurred in the past. So, the field of instructional design has had some important events through the 1940s to 1970s. We started with training soldiers to Skinner's operant conditioning to pick and carry's model, drill and kill activities, all the way until the invention of the internet. And while those were some big developments in instructional design, there have not been quite as many as those that have stemmed from the last 30 years after the creation of the internet. So after determining that old approaches to the field were too linear, the relationship between the content and the learner has grown. The use of media for the purposes of education has grown significantly, which has led to those in the field of design to tailor education in a way that is more accessible to the learner. I believe that the use of these technologies by the learner will provide instructors with the ability to better individualize the learning process, as well as make better use of some of the learning models that we've discussed this semester, like the ADDIE model or SAM and Pebble. This is because our ability to collect data will be expanded. Once individual students' data is collected on a more regular basis, implementation and evaluation steps will be more effective because we'll have a larger scope on the learner's contexts, their needs, their objectives. So, based on what we have learned and read this semester, I believe that the future of the classroom and training will be different from now in several ways. Firstly, I believe that over time classrooms will become more centered on constructivism and connectivism, which leads into my one emerging technology. So in terms of us relying increasingly on technology for everyday life, I think that different forms of new technologies will become commonplace in the educational setting. When students interact with the curriculum and determine their own outcomes, they're more invested in the learning. And with technologies like artificial intelligence, Web 2.0 tools, games, MOOCs, augmented and virtual reality becoming widely available, higher quality education that focuses on the individual will become a staple of learning. And because these technologies give the learner the ability to access knowledge in a personal manner, students can engage in activities that are authentic to the discipline in which they're learning. The biggest way that the classroom and training will be different from now is the scope of online learning as well. Whether it's distance learning or courses online, I think that if training were at 28% being online in 2015, only 25 years after the development of the internet, then over time it will become the primary form of instruction. As long as the learner has access to required devices, any form of technology could be tied into online content, which leads into my one emerging technology being augmented reality. There are two types of augmented reality. Those two types would be location-aware and vision-based. Now, location-aware presents digital media to learners as they move through a physical area with a GPS-enabled device, whereas vision-based AR presents digital media to learners after they point the camera in their device at an object. This emerging technology is supported by two learning theories, those being the situated learning theory and constructivism. Constructivism says that people learn by making sense out of the world. For example, in augmented reality, if a student were to be trained to become an astronaut, they could learn how to operate a specific machinery found in the space station. This example in itself would provide the students with real-world applications. It would be very different from simply calculating problems on a worksheet. it was noted in our readings that we retain about 10% of what we read versus 90% of what we experience, which is why augmented reality relates to constructivism and is also an emerging technology that I think will become a staple in the typical classroom. So one concrete example of augmented reality that I discovered throughout this course was Google Expeditions. So Google Expeditions allows the use of projecting 3D objects in the area using an AR-enabled device. The app also allows the learner to decide the subject. It recommends places or theories one could explore. It provides historical and cultural expeditions and allows the user to search topics that they are interested in. For example, students can project planets, body systems like the skeleton, buildings like the Roman Colosseum, and so much more. It allows the users to swipe in order to get more information on the object as well. And because of that, it can be integrated into many subject areas. For example, in reading, curriculum developers could add AR text to support, or AR features to support the text. Or students could use this to determine main ideas. In social studies or science, students could analyze aspects of what they're seeing in safe contexts. Some users on YouTube have actually contributed videos on how to integrate Google Expeditions in the classroom. One user proposed QR codes on the ground for students to move around. Another user provided examples of how you could project planets and have them analyze the difference between them. I have a quick video on the screen that I'm going to go ahead and play of Google Expeditions being used on a smartphone. As you can see, this would allow the user to analyze the Earth. Another example of how it could be used in science within the classroom. And again, another example of a volcano, DNA. So, in terms of potential benefits, there are several. When it comes to augmented reality, it's immersive, it's collaborative, it's safe, it's beneficial to the costs being spent already, and it's engaging. So to begin, I'll address benefits with training. Training typically relates to developing skills in a given subject area. For example, one might be training soldiers for battle. So if we were thinking about soldiers engaging in training, they are given extra detail in video that they might not be able to experience, and they're in safe contexts because they're not being put into the field while they're training. In terms of education, schools currently spend thousands of dollars on textbooks, resource materials, differentiated materials. I am a teacher currently who focuses on reading, writing, and social studies for 5th graders. Each student has 3 textbooks for my classes alone. So that doesn't even include math, science, specials. And the average cost of an elementary textbook is $40. That means that for my 3 classes alone, they're spending about $120 for 3 textbooks that we don't always use. Augmented reality is a resource that would be constantly available, quickly available, and it would be updated at a far lower cost than the materials that schools are currently using. If I'm returning to what I said earlier, we do retain about 10% of what we read and 90% of what we experience. So on top of saving costs on those materials, students are also putting them to greater use. Now, on the flip side, there are some concerns regarding using augmented reality. So some of those concerns include data privacy, startup costs, maturity level, functionality, and stakeholder reluctance. So in terms of data privacy, one has to truly think about who will be using this information if students are using technology on a regular basis. Startup costs might be difficult to convince stakeholders in the use of because it is expensive. Schools will have to think about training for teachers, training for students. Is this going to be something that students are mature enough for? Will they face cognitive overload? Can the school's network handle that many devices using the technology at once? Do the schools have the amount of space needed for all the students using this technology at once? Are the teachers willing to implement this into their classroom? All of these are things that one must take into consideration. Is the outcome worth the cost? So my final recommendations regarding future educational technologists relate to data privacy and our role in the field, developing authentic tasks, and diversity and accessibility. So I think that we should develop and think of ways to use data developed from these technologies in a way that does not compromise the privacy of the learner. While technology may be the future, the use of that technology and its effectiveness depend on us. Technologists should work on convincing schools to quickly develop goals to include it and other technologies in the everyday classroom. We should be developing authentic tasks that focus on the learner, even if they are more time-consuming than traditional approaches. We should be tailoring those learning experiences to content specific to standards. That way, those stakeholders find them useful. And finally, regarding diversity and accessibility, the educational technologist should take into the consideration the multimodal diversity model because it incorporates physical, cognitive, and cultural diversity in the three principal areas of universal design of learning. Multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. While technology might be the future, I want to reiterate that its effectiveness depends on us. If we are not the ones taking the initiative to make sense of the data, to interpret it in a way that would benefit the learners, our role would be obsolete. So even though there are developing technologies and it might appear as though our role is not as effective as it used to have been, we are still required in order to make the best courses, the best technologies for the user. So these developments might take time, but looking at the long term, I do believe that these recommendations should be kept in mind. Thank you again for listening today. My name is Elizabeth Lemelin. Have a great day.